Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, won't defend his title. He quits. He said, I've had it. I'm not going to play these world championship matches anymore. I'm just going to play tournaments. So he's not quitting chess. He's just quitting the title. So the king has left the building, and now it's left for Ding Liren and Ian Nepomniachtchi to play a match about the world championship. That raises a lot of questions, so we're gonna just take a look at it. How can you quit? That is probably the dream of every chess player, is to become world champion. He has been world champion for 9 years. He is by many considered the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And people think that he could probably remain a world champion for maybe 5-6 years more, and become really one of them to have the titles for the longest time. But he's not interested. He said, okay, I don't want to do this. I'm not motivated, which is interesting. One of the things is he's not quitting because he's scared. That's for sure. He's not scared of Nepomniachtchi. He won very convincingly in the last World Championship match. So I'm sure he knows that he would probably beat him again. So that's not the reason why he quits. He's just not, the title is not that important to him. He wants to go after the new rating of 2,900. I think he's at 2,864 at the moment. So he just needs 36 points. And he likes to play tournaments. He always liked to play tournaments much more than matches. The problem with matches is that it's grueling. It's unpleasant. It's the same opponent every day. Every game is so important. There's no play. It's not like it's fun or anything. And then there's the preparation is like 5 months in different camps where you look with cloud engines and supercomputers and a lot of databases, and I try to memorize opening lines, and it's boring. And Carlsen never liked this, and it's gotten worse probably for him. So he simply quits. The question is, will he regret it? Will he regret quitting the greatest title of all? Well, if you look at the history, you can see that we have had Morphy. He just disappeared. He went a little bit crazy. Then we have Yechin. He died, so he didn't quit. And then we have Fischer, who just quit as well. And but he was also a little bit strange, definitely more strange than Carlsen for sure. So and he didn't play. We become world champion. That was sort of it. And then he didn't play, and then he didn't defend his title, and that was sort of almost expected. And then we don't have any more of these things. But we do have Kasparov quitting in 2005. Or retiring, and we also have Kramnik has retired recently, and the thing is, Kasparov was clearly the best player from 2000 to 2005. The problem was he lost this match against Kramnik and was no longer world champion, and he couldn't bring himself to get into the cycles because he felt entitled to hang on to his title or something. So he was like a lost soul out there, be clearly the best player, but not the world champion. And in the end, he just couldn't have it anymore, and just gave it up. Which was at the time he was still the best player. I'm pretty sure of that. He was getting a little bit more shaky, but he was probably clearly still the best player. We can also see it when he's playing. Sometimes he won a blitz match against Nigel Short very convincingly and so on. So so I think he might regret it because if he wins all these tournaments and people start to talk a lot about the world champion. What is the world champion doing? And I assure Carlsen can beat the world champion, and the world champion start to look good and so on. And I think it will at some point it will annoy him, and the world champion will of course say, I'm the worthy world champion, and people will say, nah, you're not really. But it will bring in some strange policies here. When we had the divided title, and we had all these knockout world champions like Khalifman and Kasimzhanov and so on, and they were not really respected as world champion. Ponomarev was also one of them, but they were of course world champions. The question is this is Carlsen right? Should we change the format? We have a long history in chess of the world champion is the world championship is just the thing. There are of course tournaments that are like Linares. Now we have the Meltwater Tour and so on, and it's all very nice, but it's just not the same. The world championship is something special, and we're always looking after number one all the time. So I have a difficult feeling about this, and of course a little bit. I respect this decision. Is a fantastic decision somehow. It's impressive that you can just say, well, I only have one life. It's so boring to play these matches. I'm not going to do it anymore. Well. You and so on, but of course for Norway chess and for the chess world, it will bring in a special situation. But we will of course handle, and chess is at the moment in a good place. So who's going to be world champion? I don't know. We'll have Ding Liren against Nepomniachtchi. It looks like a very even match. The thing is, this makes the game we're going to see now into a historic game, because Hikaru Nakamura, if he had not lost this game to Ding Liren, he would have been having a match against Nepomniachtchi. Well, there is a funny story actually. Kramnik was asked if Hikaru Nakamura could be world champion, and he said, yes, of course, if everybody else quits, which was kind of condescending, but it was not enough Carlsen quits. He had to have more quits. Anyway, not to to dish Nakamura, who is a very strong player. This game is a bit fascinating. Also shows a little bit about who this Ding Liren is. He's a very tough guy, by the way. So it will be a very interesting match, and it will be it will take some time for the chess world to adjust to this. Okay, let's get into some chess. This was played in, well, it's not so long ago. It's 17 days ago, and Ding Liren is white against Nakamura. Is the round 14 in Madrid in Spain, and Nakamura got half-point lead on Ding Liren. Nepomniachtchi already won the tournament. The question was, would Carlsen play Nepomniachtchi? It turned out he was right. He was not bluffing. He wasn't going to play him. And Nakamura plays his openings here. I think mostly he have been playing this move, but this is a very solid line. Scimitars can lead to a lot of quick draws. Black is sort of getting rid of a lot of pieces, and it's probably a nice choice by Nakamura, who is very tough in endings and simple positions, which is a little bit not understood by the chess public, that probably remembers his attacking schemes more, but he's very, very tough in sort of the battle here. So the main line here, of course, is to take, and black will take with the knight and so on. But e3, and we go over to a Taras variation, and it's a symmetrical variation, and a3. And here the main move is a6. But this also makes sense, because a3 is not considered to be the most critical line in the Queen's Gambit accepted, which we transpose into now. And a6, and of course black's idea is to play b5. And this is a little bit atypical. Usually when white goes a3, he puts the bishop here on a2. But they have started to have some success with these kind of ideas, to just exchange the d and the c pawns, and play for a slight initiative. And I think it's actually mostly due to Carlsen that this kind of play is, because in the old days they would just play like this, and then they will take a quick draw and say, it's equal. But today they sort of struggle it out, which is I think nice. And this is black's is not too ambitious. He doesn't play it on d6. He's just content to play solid moves and castle and knight e4. And white is the first to sort of get going with the pieces, creating some pressure. We see that there are some squares here that could be interesting. Also, white does have the Horowitz bishops pointing down at black's king side, and sometimes he can develop a strong attack. I've lost some games in this kind of situation when I was much younger. He takes, and now there was some pressure here, which is also annoying. So it seems at the moment that white is having a slight initiative, and black decides to accept a weakness. F5 weakens the e6 pawn, and also weakens sort of the diagonal here. It cannot no longer be plucked with f6. Bishop b1, that is not to have anything in problems here, but also to leave this square free for the queen. And so white is basically hoping to put on a lot of pressure. And so black is forced to exchange this. This ending is slightly better for white, but nothing special, I think. And all this is very natural moves. h4, also a natural move, just maybe probably threatening to play knight d5. So h6 makes sense. Very interesting idea, of course. The threat is to take rook takes c6, bishop takes c6, and knight e5 check, forking the king and the bishop. But it's also interesting that white is thinking he has got some space advantage, so he does not want to exchange all the rooks, and just because that would probably be equal. So he's keeping rooks on. The c file is in general more interesting than the d file in these kind of situations because it's further away from the king. So the king can often gets to the d file and control some squares there. It's not so easy with the c file, also due to the fact that the d file is open. That was probably very abstract, but it makes sense to me. Anyway, bishop d6 takes this square under control. Rook here, and white is having a nice little initiative here. You could argue that the next move black plays here is not the most precise. It looks sort of wrong, but in general, I think Nakamura is very good in these kind of positions, and it's very hard to beat him. But this is maybe not the best move. It does give up. I think rook c8 would have been more natural, just getting ready to exchange everything. Because here it allows white to get more pressure on this, and we can see that that white is the first to sort of be active, and that's always an advantage in symmetrical position. In general, in symmetrical position, the piece activity is everything. If you don't have that, there's nothing to see, more or less. So let's say, and yeah, I have to cover e6. And here white is simply slightly better. Black does have some weaknesses here. White also has some weakness. A potential problem for white is this bishop. If black could somehow get this knight to c4, it could be annoying, but it's not so easy, and his king might get into trouble. And this bishop at the moment is also exercising some pressure on this pawn here. Rook here, so white got the c file, which is an advantage. But okay, black is solid, and he's not gonna panic. He's just gonna play normal move, and well, natural move. We see that there's also these holes here, like we discussed a little bit earlier. I think he's also planning to play something like this, and get the rook in, and maybe make it difficult for black to sort of coordinate. You're trying to, in this kind of position, you're trying to destroy your opponent's coordination. Nakamura does not panic. He attacks the pawn and get ready to exchange more pieces. And in general, if he gets to exchange everything, nothing bad will happen to him. We see this move, and I'll move a little bit closer to the mic. Which sort of, this could be weak. This is a potential weakness. We'll make it yellow. But it also was on attack. You don't want to play d3. And this is at the same time not being able to move without getting an isolated pawn here. Bishop f6. And I think here white is better. He might play, I think knight d4 is interesting. He could also take with the knight. Bishop d4 is a little bit of a weird move. I think he, because of course you like the knight to take, but it's still it's a strange move. But they play pretty decent, because the bishop is not that great on this square, because we see here the problem is black has white has two pieces that want to go to this square, and actually he would prefer the knight to go there. But after e5, you either have to retreat back or stay here and take away the square for the knight. Bishop d8, knight f6. Black just plays solid chess, and all this is very natural. Bishop d6. Black is playing well here, covering the pawn here. White is also staying active. I think this exchange, the h pawn for the e pawn, would be clearly to white's advantage. Notice something like this, which looks like it wins the h pawn, has the problem that the knight comes in and is also annoying. So instead, black plays this move. Also nice to sort of box the king in, and he's basically hoping to activate the rook and become and get a good position. And I secretly think that Nakamura is always playing slightly for a win, even though he knows that a draw is a good result. I think he would like to win anyway. It's just how he thinks. This move is closing the c file and getting ready to get the rook in. Bishop h4 is also a natural move, attacking something here on f2. And white got the rook in, giving a check on d7, and the king has to go. And g3 also have to go, and still white has a slight initiative, little bit more space, a little bit more activity, but black is solid, and so on. And here is the deciding point in the game. If black plays something like this move, rook d8, I don't think he will lose. Either white will have to allow the rook to become very, very active, not very pleasant to have it going into white's position, or he would have to exchange the rook, and that is probably a very equal ending. So the minor piece ending, even though it's with same color bishop, which is with opposite color bishop, is probably very drawish. But still, I think the computer says completely equal, and I think it's okay. After this move, that's a little bit too passive, and probably it's not a sign that that Nakamura is playing for draw. It's just a sign that he's not really afraid of anything. He thinks, I'm solid, I'm okay, I'm gonna do fine. But after this move, it turns out that he did something wrong, because suddenly he can't activate his rook, and white is taking over slowly. He will. The knight here is not. Basically, white wants to play something like this, and knight c5, and this pawn will easily become a target. So black panics a little bit, and white takes, and e4. You could also take on f4 and just play for the attack instead. Makes a lot of sense. d7 is clearly a great target, but e4 is sort of the long-term way of playing, because you're hoping to win this pawn, and then you will have strong pawns here. Black plays bishop, getting pieces out. Right here, rook e8, and here the best move for white is actually king e2. That's a pretty cool move, just getting into the rooks, but making sure that because he can't take. But he went the other way, which is more logical somehow. And notice that black can't take this due to this little trick. Or is that correct? Or is it f3? It's probably f3. No. Oh no. Can you take there? Oh, and the knight will just go somewhere. Where would it go? Where would the knight go? maybe here. And I think white will win some material here. Yeah. That was I thought I had figured it out. Okay, so knight e5 and knight f5, and this is the problem for black. His king is simply bad in this ending, and white got some serious chances to win something here. This pawn is very weak. Black goes for activity. Makes sense. Attacking the a pawn, bishop e7, and white decides that a rook and knight is very strong against a king, especially if it can help by the king or a pawn. It can easily get a mating attack. So he decides that the bishop is a good piece. It covers the pawn on d7, so he keeps it and also makes a bigger attack here. White gets this pawn, black gets this pawn, but this is clearly to white advantage. This active rook is the big difference. Black's rook is not coming into the game at all, and just clearing the way to probably just cover it here and being ready to play something like this and winning d7 and f3. Covering the e pawn, bishop c1, yeah, nice little move, just winning a pawn, and I think black is totally lost here. But it's kind of nice. By the way, one of the important things here is to be very alert, not allow any kind of counterplay, and play for domination, trying to push the opponent back. That's, by the way, almost always that way I try to play. But it's especially effective in these kind of positions where you just need to push back, because you will win something at some point. And also it has been very nice that white the whole game has managed to keep this rook here inactive. Check, and just of course not gonna. And knight switches to active position where it both have some attacking chances. It covers important squares, and it defends on and it attacks the bishop. The bishop, by the way, is running out of squares. If you see this lost soul here, it's in trouble. And we see it here, attacking the bishop, attacking the bishop. The bishop has to go here. Bishop e3, closing in on here and threatening the knight, and basically something like this is rather unpleasant. So black, after bishop e3, black gave up, and de facto that meant that Ding Liren, Chinese player who was not really qualified for the candidates, managed to become a world championship candidate. It will be interesting to see if Nepomniachtchi will be allowed to play in the World Championship match. I think he will, but if Djokovic does not win the election, he might not be allowed to play, which would also change the situation again, because he did play under FIDE flag, which is a very strange sort of construction that you say, okay, you're Russian and we don't want to have Russians, so we say you're not Russian. I don't really understand the logic that you can do that, but of course it's also tough that it's not Nepomniachtchi, of course, that started the war in Ukraine. And he should probably not be sanctioned for that, but still, it is his country that's doing the violence, so not so easy. Anyway, this was DM Talks. Thank you for watching.